Shalom and welcome. We are honored to bring you together tonight for a very special experience as we come together from around the world to honor Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, the Memorial Day of our soldiers, of those who have fallen from acts of terror. Yom HaZikaron has a natural connection to it for native-born Israelis. Everyone is directly connected to it. You're never more than one person away from someone who was killed in battle or by a terrorist. No one is removed, no matter where you turn, until you meet an ole, someone from the diaspora who came to build their life in Israel, our one and only Jewish homeland. This miraculous place often defies the cruelty and pain we have had to endure as a nation to defend our rights to the sacred soil. As Israel's national poet, Chaim Nachman Bialik, once asked in his poem El Tzipor to the bird in 1892, in that warm and beautiful land, does evil reign and do calamities happen too? Indeed, yes, this land has seen its fair share of bloodshed, and today we come together to honor those who have fallen as soldiers in the endless battle for our freedom, designed to strip us of that very freedom and our right to self-defense. So what is the value of remembering? And if we can't all feel some sort of attachment to it ourselves, especially from a distance, what is it we are expected to remember? And if we know none of more than 23,000 people we honor on this day, how can we grasp the personal sacrifice and how it makes us feel? Momentarily, we will be hearing together the national siren that will sound throughout our country. And we invite you to stand in silence and to think of all those who have lost their lives as a part of our national story. It is our wish to bring you into the Israeli family by sharing these stories as a source of inspiration. And is the very fact of our togetherness here, we are remembering them. Each piece you will hear is going to be read aloud by a lone soldier, a young man or woman whose selfless sacrifice to our home country gives them a powerful and unique perspective. Join us as we stand.
Shalom, my name is Tovia Book. I served as a Chayal Boded, lone soldier in Givati, as a Chovesh Kravi, as a combat medic. During my service, we spent many years inside South Lebanon in the security zone. Anyone who said they were not scared was either lying or stupid. It was the only time in our service we walked around fully locked and loaded with a bullet in the barrel. Every patrol, every ambush, I walked around with 35 kilograms of equipment, almost half my body weight, in both ammunition, grenades, medical supplies, and even anti-mine shoes. Our purpose inside Lebanon, of course, was to prevent cross-border terror attacks. And every night we would lie in ambush. And I remember one particular ambush where we were lying and we'd had our briefing from the intelligence officer. We were deep inside Lebanon, very high up, and it started to snow. We were in a place called Har Dov. And we couldn't just get up and go home because we were on the wrong side of the international border in enemy territory. So we started to think. You think of all the basic things, such as your friends and your family. Then especially myself as a lone soldier, thought about, what am I doing here? I'm here voluntarily. I don't need to be here. And yet I was there. And my mind flashed back to the briefing of the intelligence officer. And he told us what was expected that evening, where the Hezbollah might be coming in, what our role was. But he finished with the same sentence, like a mantra he finished every single briefing with, which was, HaMesima, your mission, La'agen al Yeshuvei HaTzafon, to protect the northern settlements. It was then at that moment I had what's called a Rega Emet, a moment of truth, when I realized that everything I was doing, all I was doing with all of my soul and all of my being, was the most Jewish thing I could be doing, protecting my fellow Jews. Here I am, the grandson of Holocaust survivors and victims, lying on the other side of the border, making sure that never again means never again. Now, they say you're a real Israeli when you know somebody on Mount Herzl. And for me, unfortunately, that happened that same winter when one of my friends in the unit was killed and we went to the funeral, the Levaya. I've been in Israel for just over a year. We were studying Mount Herzl. There was a sea of purple, what the psychologists call the reverse order death, because parents should not be burying children. It was incredibly solemn. It was moving. It was emotional. It was gut-wrenching. And quite often, I think about Oren, who will remain 19 forever. Every time I go to Mount Herzl, every time I take a group there, every time I go there by myself, I think about this sacrifice that has been made, not just by Oren, but all of our young men and women, over 23,000 of them. And as Chaim Weizmann said, no one gave us this country for free. We didn't get this state on a silver platter. But Motam tzivu lanu et hachayim, their death allowed us all to live lives, full lives. And I will conclude with a reading from the Psalm, Shir HaMa'alot, 4 words to sum up Jewish history, that sum up where we are today. Hazorim b'dima v'rina yiktzaru. Those that sow in tears will reap in joy. And as we pause and commemorate the sacrifice of those young men and women and praise those young men and women who carry on serving, put the best years of their lives selflessly for the state and for our people, we remember the end of those words. Yes, we have sown in tears, but we will reap in joy.
Please join us as we hear the flame of remembrance and the lighting of the candle of remembrance, followed by the singing of El Maleh for our fallen soldiers and victims of terror.
Each year, we light this remembrance torch as a symbol to honor all the heroes and heroines of our generation, the partisan groups, the ghetto fighters, and the underground defenders, the innocent victims of terror attacks, and those who fought in the wars to defend the state of Israel since its establishment. This day, we remember fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. Take a close look at the lives of these soldiers, their families, and the dignity bestowed them. On this powerful day, we honor the sacrifice that the men and women who are citizens of Israel make for the continued existence of our beloved Jewish state. While the list of fallen soldiers become longer every year, the importance of the need to fight for a right to be recognized is never forgotten and has become ever more important. Each year, we yearn for the day when the sacrifice will no longer be necessary, when Israel's existence will not be questioned, when our history will not be denied, when our borders will be secure, and when the world will accept the meaningfulness and importance of the Jewish state in our ancient Jewish homeland. Until that day, we'll forever protect the memory of our soldiers and citizens who have fallen in battle or have been murdered by the hands of the enemy.
El male rachamim, shochen b'momim, hametze menucha nechona, al kanfei השכינה. במעלות קדושים טהורים וגיבורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים לנשמות הקדושים שנלחמו בכל מערכות ישראל במחתרת ובצבא ההגנה לישראל ושנפלו במלחמתם ומסרו נפשם על קדושת השם העם והארץ בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור מצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן מנוחתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם ותעמוד לכל ישראל זכותם ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימין ונאמר
Magasha Kesef, Jonathan Alterman. And the land grows still, the red eye of the sky slowly dimming over smoking frontiers, as the nation arises, torn at heart but breathing, to receive its miracle, the only miracle. As the ceremony draws near, it will rise, standing erect in the moonlight in terror and joy, when across from it will step out a youth in a lass and slowly march toward the nation. Dressed in battle gear, dirty, shoes heavy with grime, they ascend the path quietly to change garb, to wipe their brow. They have not yet found time. Still bone weary from days and from nights in the field, full of endless fatigue and unrest. Yet the dew of their youth is still seen on their head. Thus they stand at attention, giving no sign of life or death. Then a nation in tears and amazement will ask, "Who are you?" And they will answer quietly, "We are the silver platter on which the Jewish state was given." Thus they will say and fall back in shadows, and the rest will be told in the Chronicles of Israel.
Please rise for the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברך חירותי והמליך מלכותי, וחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב מואמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עולמיה, ברך וישתבח ויתברך ויתחמם ויתנשא, ודע ויתעלה ותעלל שמי לקודשה ברכו, ועילה מכל בחטא ושחטא, תשפחתה ונחמתה, דמרה מעלמה ועולמו, אמן. יהי שלום הרב משמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עשה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
2,688 Israeli soldiers were killed in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. They fell defending their country against 6 invading Arab armies. I wrote this poem when I was a soldier in the memory of an unknown tanker in the 7th Armored Brigade on the Golan Heights, where 170 Israeli tanks without night vision tried to defend the border against 1,400 Syrian tanks equipped with the latest technology. I was inspired by Rabbi Howard Kahn's at my bar mitzvah and his. When I was 18, I left home for college and became an adult. When he was 18, he finished training and became a fighter. When I was 18, my teachers taught me to think critically and analyze texts. When he was 18, his teachers taught him to shoot a tank and analyze enemy positions. When I was 18, I studied the map of my university campus and learned the way from my dorm to the classroom. When he was 18, he studied the Golan Heights and learned the route through the hills to the battlefields. When I was 18, I asked God's forgiveness on Yom Kippur and his guidance that I might live an honorable life. When he was 18, he asked God's courage on Yom Kippur and his guidance that he might defend his country with honor. When I was 18, I cherished my relationship with God. When he was 18, he questioned his relationship with God. On Yom Kippur of my 18th year, I lifted my voice and sang out for forgiveness. On Yom Kippur of his 18th year, he lifted his Uzi and his bullets sang out their fury. On Yom Kippur of my 18th year, I held beliefs that were unfounded, smug in the confidence of my youth. On Yom Kippur of his 18th year, he held the northern border in a tank without ammunition, fearful of the imminent Syrian offensive. When I was 18, I was called up to the classroom to speak to my fellow students. When he was 18, he was called up to heaven to meet his fellow heroes, Judah Maccabee, Simon Bar Kokhba, and Yosef Trumpeldor. When I was 18, I began my journey through adulthood. When he was 18, he ended his journey through this world. On Yom Kippur of my 18th year, I studied the Torah, prayed, and lived. On Yom Kippur of his 18th year, he studied field maps, fought, and lives now in each of us.
The club no one wants to belong to. From the moment we got the dreaded knock on the door informing my family that my younger brother Ari, a sergeant in the Palachan Brigade's anti-terror unit, had been killed in battle, I suddenly found that I belonged to a whole new crowd, one from which I can never escape. Our members are spread far and wide, and they come from every sector of society, rich and poor, Sephardi and Ashkenazi, immigrants and Sabra. Generally, they go unnoticed, blending into the general populace, but other members of the club can spot them. They're the ones standing off to the side, shedding a tear at a friend's wedding, hoping no one will notice them as they think of their sibling who will never marry or bring children into the world. They're the ones choking up while lighting Shabbat candles, recalling the good times when the entire family sat around the Shabbat table. They're the ones who stop in their tracks and stare at the Yortzeit candles while shopping at the supermarket.
It takes a certain type of person to say, okay, I'll answer the call. I'll do what it takes. And if it comes down to it, yes, I will give up my life in defense of something I feel so strongly about, in defense of the people I love. It is because of the sacrifice of our soldiers that the Jews have a place they call home, a place where they can live freely, a place where their identity as Jews is intrinsically tied to their nationality as Israelis, a place where Jews can come from other places in the world and join the ranks of soldiers to fight for Jewish life, Jewish dignity, and Jewish survival. Remember the fallen so they won't become the forgotten. And please remember the lone soldiers who are out there right now, giving it all they have to offer. Just as we remember everyone who is no longer with us, we also have to look to the future, to the ones who are there now and the ones who will come. Before you go to bed, when you arise, And when you hear the news distorted about our brave soldiers, stop and think about those who are out there, giving it their best in hope of a better, a safer country. Prayer for the IDF soldier. As a nation, let us unite in our commitment to the future of the State of Israel and the security of our sons and daughters who serve to protect her. He who has blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless the fighters of Israel Defense Forces who stand guard over the land and the cities of our God, from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the great sea unto the approach of Avra on the land, in the air, and the sea. May the Almighty cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed He, preserve and rescue our fighters from the trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness. And may He send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May He lead our enemies under our soldiers. Sway, and may He grant them salvation and crown them to victory. And may there be fulfilled for them the verse, for it is the Lord your God who gives with you to battle your enemies and to save you. Now let us respond, Amen.
רצית לעוף, רצית כבר הלאה, עם חצי חיוך, עלית למעלה, מיליון כוכבים בשמיים תופסים את הצבע שלך בעיניים, תן רק עוד שנייה אחת לומר לך שלום. רצית לעוף, הלכת רחוק מדי בתוך הטירוף, אין מי שישמור אליי, מיליון כוכבים בשמיים תופסים את הצבע שלך בעיניים, רציתי שנייה אחת לומר לך שלום.
Oh my God, I can't even find it.
אני רציתי לשיר, אתה הרמת גיטרה, מלאך מנגן לי עכשיו, אז איתך אני שרה, מיליון כוכבים בשמיים תופסים את הצבע שלך בעיניים, רציתי לשיר לך, לומר לך שלום. רציתי שנייה אחת לומר לך שלום, תן רק עוד שנייה אחת לומר לך שלום. ביי טוב.
In defense of all of us, a slow, loud boom that bellowed from the heart of the Jewish people. I closed my eyes, and in an instant I was transported across the history of the Jewish nation. As the sound of the siren wailed mournfully in the background, it took me back not just to the history of the state of Israel, but of the land of Israel itself. I thought not just of the soldiers of Israel who died bravely defending their families and their country. I thought not just of the victims of terror who had their ordinary lives ripped away by explosions of hatred and bullets of intolerance. I thought also of the many Jews who had fought back against tyranny, from the Greeks to the mighty Roman Empire. And I thought of Elazar ben Yair, who held out against the 10th Legion of the Roman army atop the lonely desert fortress of Masada. What they all had in common was their love for this small patch of land in a tiny corner of the world, the same patch I was standing on. As the siren that cried tears of sadness for those lost continued around me, it also proclaimed with pride the determination of the Jewish people to be free in its own land. I watched and listened as the names of those who had grown up in this kibbutz were called, those who had gone off to defend their homes and their loved ones but did not return. The tears were real and painful and heart-wrenching. The bond of this people is strong, and those soldiers who fought to defend the people of Israel were not only defending the citizens of Israel, they were also defending the children of Israel, no matter where they are in the world.
As we come to the end of our meaningful ceremony, we have tried to provide for you the voice of the soldier, lone soldiers who came from around the world in order to volunteer in the Israel Defense Forces. It is an incredible opportunity for us to hear through their voices what it felt like, what it meant to them to have this powerful connection. Many of us who never met somebody who fell in a battle or in a terror attack might feel that this day is disconnected from us, and yet we share in its destiny and in its legacy. We carry on this torch of memory for today and for future generations, that we may pass it on to our children, that we may be able to encourage a continued memory. Let us recall their lives, let's honor their memories, let us continue their legacies of love and sacrifice, so that all these will not have been in vain. Even when we think about those who have fallen in terror, we remind ourselves that we must take our pain, we must take our sorrow, and exchange them for unity, strength, determination, love, and purpose. And the evil intention of those determined to weaken us made us mightier and more powerful for our people, our land, and our ancient heritage. And the hateful intentions of those who seek to destroy the Jewish life and the Jewish spirit, we are proof that they have failed. It may be a difficult one, but we share in it together. We want to recognize and thank all of the lone soldiers who joined us tonight and our organizational partners who helped to make tonight's program possible. We are greatly appreciative for the hundreds around the world who are joining us, and we know that you are doing everything you can to carry on the memory, to feel connected, and to feel Israel at home wherever you may be in the world.
אור הנר נמהל באור הירח, על הקר שערך שפוך, בחלום צמרת עץ פורח, והשקט חזר, רואים לפי החיוך. שערה הייתה, הנה חלפה לה, ופנייך שוב רוגעות כפני הים. עם האור נוסיף ללכת הלאה, עוד הדרך רבה, המסע עדיין לא תם. לא קלה היא לא קלה דרכך, בעינייך לפעמים כל עוגות, עוד צעדות פורחים יש לפנינו, עוד הרים גבוהים וצונני פסגות. לא קלה היא לא קלה דרכנו, בעינייך לפעמים כל עוגות, עוד צעדות פורחים יש לפנינו, עוד הרים גבוהים וצונני פסגות. רסיסים של אור בדמעותייך, וחיוך שוב מגשש דרכו אליי. כל הטוב עודנו לפנייך, שימי ראש על כתפי, תני לי ידך בידי. עוד מעט איתם הנר לגבוה, עוד מעט יבס השקט המבורך. המולת היום תתחיל לפגוע, לא תלכי לבדך, אני שם איתה. לא קלה היא לא קלה דרכנו, בעינייך לפעמים קוטגות, בצדות פורחים יש לפנינו, עוד הרים גבוהים וצונני פסגות. לא קלה היא לא קלה דרכנו, בעינייך לפעמים קוטגות, עוד שדות פורחים יש לפנינו, עוד הרים גבוהים וצונני פסגות.
הגוזלים שלי עזבו את הקן, פרסו כנפיים ועפו, ואני ציפור זקנה נשארתי בקן, מקווה מאוד שהכל יהיה בסדר. תמיד ידעתי שיבוא היום שבו צריך להיפרד, אבל עכשיו זה ככה בא לי פתאום, אז מה הפלא שאני קצת דואג? גוף גוזל חתוך את השמיים, טוס לאן שבא לך, רק אל תשכח, יש נשר בשמיים, גור לך. עכשיו נשארנו לבדנו בקן, אבל אנחנו ביחד. חבקי אותי חזק, תגידי לי כן, אל תדאגי, ביחד כיף להזדקן. עוף גוזל חתוך את השמיים, טוס לאן שבא לך, רק אל תשכח, יש נשר בשמיים, גור לך. אני יודע שככה זה בטבע, וגם אני עזבתי כן, אבל עכשיו כשבא הרגע אז מכניס קצת בגרון, מכניס קצת בגרון.
Please join us as we stand for Hatikva. Kadima
Zion, Sophia.
Take my hand,
Eretz Zion Yerushalayim V'yotam chafshi Ve'yatzim Eretz Zion Yerushalayim V'yotam chafshi Ve'yatzim Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Our ceremony has come to an end, and we would like to welcome you to a unique presentation to be run by Eitan Rund, who is exploring the Old City 1948. Please stay with us and enjoy the experience of learning about this tremendous and powerful battle in the heart of a nation.
Okay, hi everyone. First of all, thank you very much for joining. I hope that this presentation, Alana, if you can just, somebody give me a thumbs up that you guys can hear me well and we can get started. Okay, beautiful. I hope that this presentation I'm going to be doing now, that'll hopefully last, I hope, only 45 minutes, will hopefully make this Memorial Day be more meaningful. Since this is more similar to a virtual tour than anything else, I'm going to share my screen, a presentation right now. You guys, whoever's on the computer, can right now scroll the mouse to scroll my face that you guys can see. It's usually a little box. If you can scroll it to the left bottom corner, you will see better. The pictures will be blocked off less that way. So that's what I recommend, to scroll it over to the left bottom part. And let's get started. But I decided to talk about 1948 and the Jewish Quarter because the Jewish Quarter is probably the most trivial place that we have. We always visit before you go to the Western Wall or just on a tour or we usually think about it as a place to get falafel, shawarma, or some souvenir. We don't usually look at it like as a place where there was an insane battle which took place over there, which was the case. If I compared to more recent events, let's say if I look at what happened in the Jewish Quarter, if I look at what happened in the Gaza Strip in 5 years ago, and I compared for a minute, so Protective Edge, there were 70,000 soldiers that were called up. The Jewish Quarter had only 160. The campaign there took 50 days, and the Jewish Quarter took one-fifth time, a little less. And the Jewish Quarter is about 4,000 times smaller. Yet in both places, both in the Jewish Quarter and over there were the same number of soldiers killed. So the Jewish Quarter is like an extract. Where they basically take the Gaza Strip, and the same thing happened there, but it was way more intense, and one-fifth the time in a much smaller area and much less a number of soldiers, the same number of casualties. Then I can look at it again as the most trivial place which I visit and actually see what actually happened there. The Jewish Quarter, what happened there, a brief introduction in 1948, the UN come up with a great plan to divide this country into two. But what happened the day after the partition plan was many Arabs in the Old City area were not happy. The Jewish people were dancing all night. The Jewish newspapers are counting their chickens way before they hatch. They say the Jewish state has risen, yay, so happy. The Arab newspapers look like this. You don't have to read Arabic to understand that down here it says Dawlat al-Yahudiyya, the Jewish state. You don't have to have a PhD in Arabic studies to understand these Arab canons say Arab states all around. What they're trying to say is you can go declare independence, but what happened de facto was that the War of Independence had begun the next day. Right where I made a little tiny arrow on the screen is Mamilla Street. I'm sure many people are familiar with Mamilla. The following day, many Arabs, I don't know if it was thousands or many hundreds, but a lot of Arabs came out of the Old City and were opposing the UN resolution that they made there, the plan that they had. And this demonstration very quickly became violent, and they started waving metal rods all around, and they bashed down a lot of Jewish shops. If I look at them bashing, if I look at this picture of them looting the shops in Mamilla, I can look at the right side here and I see British, which are right there in the picture. They're basically apathetic looking at it. And at this point, the British didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to help the Jews or help the Arabs. They were not pro-Jewish or pro-Arab. At this point, they were pro-British. They were thinking, we are leaving Israel. We don't want to get involved. In places where there were a lot of Jews, it was helpful for the Jews. In places where the Jews were outnumbered very tremendously or very big time, then it was very, very bad for the Jews. After the Arabs finished looting everything they wanted, they basically took out the merchandise that was left and they torched it. By that afternoon, Mamilla looked like this, and the next morning, this was a picture that different reporters took. If you look here on the left side, by the way, this is where Aroma is today, and Mamilla gets like a little curve. You can clearly see it in the picture. That's where Roladin, Aroma, and at the end, Ramon Cafe are. Afterwards, Alan Cunningham, the chief British commissioner, comes over and he looks at it and he says, "Oh my God, I can't believe the whole road is burnt. Oh dear, oh my." And he puts up guards to guard the street. If I look at Mamilla, this picture, which is totally burnt and the street, what's left in the street is in shambles, I can look carefully at this picture and I can circle a British soldier who's standing there. Where was this British soldier the night before? Again, the same thing. He is leaving Israel in 6 months. He's not thinking about Jews or Arabs. He's thinking about himself. At this point, he was drinking, beer in the bar when they were riding, and he comes the next day because that's when it's safe to come. From that point on, the end of Miller Street, at least Jaffa Gate, this is a picture the next day of Jaffa Gate. The British people put up around it, tanks blocking off access, and from this point on, the old city is under siege. This is a picture of the line. This is not like in Corona and Passover in Israel, where people wait online for 20 minutes to get eggs or for 35 minutes to get into a shopping center. These are people waiting for hours online. There were 2,000 people in the old city which wait online to go get a cup of sugar or a cup of flour or a cup of rice. What they give people is a lot of rice. They give 1 cup of rice per family. That's all they had. People waited hours online to get enough calories to sustain their family, to live, and this is what they did over there. Now, the British people also put up positions around the Jewish quarter, but they weren't facing out towards the Arab aggressors. They were facing inside towards the Jews at that point. Now, the reason, if you look at this picture, you can see a British soldier with a pon-pon and his beret. He's from the Scottish Division. He's facing inside towards a synagogue named Nissan Bek, shul in the Old City. If you look at this picture here, it's another soldier from the British brigade, from the Scottish brigade. He has a pon-pon in his beret. He's facing inside. That's the Horva synagogue. Now, they're not facing out at the Arabs. They're facing in towards the Jews. Or in other words, they're not trying to watch the Jews. They're watching the Jews. They're looking very closely at them. In a minute, I will explain why they're looking so closely. There were a lot of benefits doing that. But if you aim out at the Arabs, you might get hurt. And if you aim inside at the Jews, the chances of you getting hurt were much smaller. So they didn't really do that. If I look at the Old City population-wise, what does it look like? I had in 1948 in the Old City, I had about 2,000 Jews, but I had about 40,000 Arabs. Today the numbers are a little different. There are 2,600 Jews and about 2,900 Arabs. Then it was a little different. There were more Arabs and there were a little less Jews. You don't need to be a mathematician to understand that you're outnumbered 1 to 20. And this is very, very, very challenging. If you're outnumbered 1 to 20, your odds of survival are very, very small. Let's say not all the Arabs were in charge, were combatants, and I'm sure that they weren't all. Let's say only 10% were. That's still very problematic when I'm counting women and children on the Jewish side, because again, the Jewish quarter has been under siege for 5 months before the hostilities even began. When the battles even began, they were under siege for 5 months before, and they didn't really stand much chance when they were outnumbered so badly. Now, what do the people look like? When you get drafted, you get a lot of different things. You get a vest, you get a helmet, you get canteens, you get knee pads, you get a gun. One of the things you do. Now, the first thing you do with a gun, many people here might think, well, you shoot it. No, it's dangerous. It can kill people. You shoot next day in the shooting range. You make sure the safety's on, and you do one more thing. Once a day, you get an hour. You can shave, and you can shower, and you can talk to your girlfriend if you want. Well, I got news for you. In that 1 hour, this is what every single soldier would do, and every single youngster who's listening to us, or every single person here who has younger kids knows this is probably the case. You take 100 selfies with your gun. This is me. When I was lowest on the food chain in the Army. I was a new trainee 15 years ago in paratroopers, and I took 1 million videos. This is before smartphones. This is like an actual film that I had to spend money on developing to go and get a picture of me taken. And I'm holding a bunch of guns showing off. This is what we did every single day. The same exact thing I did, an Arab did 50 years older than me, or 58 years older than me, and I'd like to introduce him. Let's say his name was Abdallah at this point, and he's showing off a picture. He's putting a gun in one hand and a pipe in the other, like Sherlock Holmes, like look, I have class. And he puts a bunch of guns and daggers, and he's trying to show off his pictures to his girlfriends, showing his girlfriend what a macho he is, how many rifles and how many guns he has. By the way, this is the stupidest person in Earth, and there's like a Darwin competition of stupidest thing you can possibly do, like smoking in a gas station or something like that. This is the absolute winner because he hangs the grenades from the safety. If you look carefully at his belt, and that means you take one step and the grenades fall down and the entire room might blow up. It's a very, very not smart thing. If I look at this guy, where does this guy get guns from? Guns were illegal. But if I look in the old city in that time, what do I get? What do I see? I see a shop. Let's analyze this for a minute. This is obviously a shoe shop. If you look at the merchandise in the back, but on the front on this display, they have guns and grenades and there's a little child here I circled. One of the salesmen does not look like he's in high school even, and he's selling grenades in his hand, yelling, I don't know, 5 for 100 or whatever he's yelling. This was very, very problematic. There are other shops down the way, and what does the Jewish population look like at the same time? This is what they look like. There were Haredi Jews, or Orthodox people living in the old city. Again, there were 2,000 of these. If I look through archives and I look through pictures, I see many, many pictures of Arabs with guns, posing with British soldiers, trying to get a souvenir back home for them. And I find a lot of pictures like these of British soldiers looking for Jews, searching them for arms. Now, the reason they did this was very profitable. They would walk 100 yards with the gun and they would sell it in the Muslim quarter. It was so close. Why not? They're leaving Israel at this point. They're thinking about themselves mainly. And they're thinking, how can I make more, more beer money or more waste money before I go back to England? And this was a very profitable thing to do. So remember I told you before that the British soldier was looking at the Jewish quarter? There's a reason why he did it. All that I'm doing now is a pre-show. This is just to explain to you what we're talking about, not to dive into the battle. Now we can dive into the battle. Everything I did until now, everything was a piece of cake. Everything was like the how do you say, an appetizer before the main, before the actual food comes out. Why? Because the day that we declared independence here in Israel was the day the British decided they're leaving. So if there was some sort of a buffer zone between Jews and Arabs that were fighting then, or something keeping the Arab armies from invading, that ended that day. Meaning if until now they were fighting against the locals, Palestinian locals who were, aiming guns and taking pictures, and a lot of these rifles were junky or jammed or would barely shoot. The next day you're fighting an actual Arab army that's invading into Israel. This is a picture of the Jordanian Legion coming in through Beit Lechem, coming into Jerusalem. Like this is about 20 minutes away from the old city. And these guys are 20 minutes from reaching the old city. Now, if I take an entire brigade, like if I look at the entire IDF paratroopers brigade or the entire IDF Golani brigade, and I let them attack an area the size of, 9 football fields, like 2 blocks in Brooklyn or something, with Haredi people, I mean, you don't stand a chance. Remember, there are 2,000 civilians and babies and women. I'm counting everybody. This is like the entire Golani brigade. It's like 1,400 guys. So you're you're in deep trouble. It's very, very, very problematic. And what I want to do now is zoom into the Jewish quarter itself. If the Jewish quarter is, again, roughly the size of 2 blocks in Brooklyn, it's about 300 by 350 meters on both sides. And the Arabs try attacking from all sides. I'm going to skip a little bit so we can hold timing better. And like you guys can see the screen now, inside the Jewish quarter, I'm going to post on different circles, and the circle is going to move on different locations. And we're going to try to make these places come to life. Lubinsky Post was a post that was named after the Lubinsky family, which lived in that house. All the posts around the Jewish quarter had names of people who lived there. Lubinsky Post, Weisberg Post, Cohen Post. There were different posts named after Jewish families that were there. And this one happened to be called Lubinsky Post. Now, if I look at a Google image, because in Corona we're very limited on walking around taking pictures, this is what it looks like today. It's the archway. There's 2 windows over the archway, and there's 2 windows on top floor, but the bottom 2 windows are the Lubinsky Post. Today, for those who don't know, it's in dorm of Nativ Aryeh Yeshiva. It's right above the white car. Now, I always ask my people that I'm there, the people I'm guiding, ask them, if they've heard of Sderot, and they say, of course we have. And I say, what's Sderot famous for? And they say, rockets. And for those who don't know, Sderot is a very small city right near the Gaza Strip, and they're the easiest target if you belong to Hamas and you want to shoot something around the Gaza Strip. Sderot is the easiest, biggest target. So what they do is you have 10-second warning. By the way, sirens never come when you're sitting in the shelter watching Netflix and thinking, now is a good time for a siren. I'd like to come now. It never does. It comes when you're in the bathroom. It comes when you're showering. It never comes before or after. It comes always during the shampoo. Now, I have very short hair. I'm a boy. If anybody has long hair, a boy or girl, they can tell you they use a lot of shampoo. It's a lot of hair. My wife's best friend lives in Sderot, and every time she showers, she has very long black curly hair. Every time she showers, she gets a siren, and she has a dilemma if to run or stay in the shelter. Americans always say you run, by the way. Israelis always say you stay in the shower and you rough it. This is not Sderot. If I look at the opposite side of the same road, literally if I stand where that white car is and turn around and turn the camera around, it looks like this. Like what I see is that the distance between the Jewish quarter and the Muslim quarter are exactly 31 meters. That's like 100 feet. Between the Jewish quarter, if I were Steven Spielberg and I were filming a movie, a director, and I were filming a movie, what would it sound like? One side would be booming and blasting my eardrum. The other side, I would probably hear silence. These guys are shooting all they want. They have an entire, I don't know, a battalion coming in through here, 400 guys, a regiment. And on the other side, I have silence. I have a few Haredi guys yelling Shema Yisrael. That's all I have. And these guys are shooting. If you listen to a movie that one side is blasting your eardrum, the other side is silence, you would be convinced that your earphones are broken. You'd be convinced something is wrong. Now, you try your laptop, maybe your friend's cable, your brother's, and you try them, and you're like, what's going on? And they're like, no, here they're shooting, here they're holding up. Now, I stood here right outside a few years ago with a group of soldiers from TLV. I remember that very well. And right where there's a soldier on the right side of the screen here, there was a very older, like I'd say an 80-year-old looking guy who was standing and listening to me. Now, generally when I'm guiding bigger groups, I'm okay with people joining in. I don't really mind that much. Let somebody else enjoy, have fun. And what happened was, when I finished talking, this guy quickly walks to me and he says, you tour guide? I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, do you know the old city? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. Why? He says, do you know what the Jewish position was called up here in these two windows right above your head? I'm like, yeah, it was called the Lubinsky post. Okay, I'm scrolling back on it now. He says, wow, very good. He says, do you know who the commander of Lubinsky post was? I said, yeah, I do. Why? He says, do you know what this, do you know what the commander, what was his name? I said, yeah, his name was Elitzur Ben-Gul. I read his book that he wrote about the battle, and that was his name. His name was Elitzur Ben-Gul. Why? He pulls out his hand and to shake my hand, and he says, nice to meet you, pal. My name happens to be Elitzur Ben-Gul. And like, my jaw dropped onto my belly button. I'm here talking about the war when the person who fought here is listening in on me. And I took off my speaker. I usually speak with a speaker. I took it off and I told this guy, now you tell the soldiers what it was like fighting here. He says, I hear. He asked me, you're a reservist? I said, yeah, I did the reserve duty still. Why? He's like, where are you? I'm in a paratroopers brigade in reserve duty. He asked me, what do you schlep with you? Now, when we practiced going to Lebanon, they gave me 30 grenades. They gave me 2 missiles. They gave me a stretcher and 10 clips in my vest. This guy looks at me and says, and I'm a small guy. People here don't see me. I'm for those who don't know, I'm shorter than almost everybody watching this presentation. I'm 5 feet tall. This guy looks at me and says, you crossed the border in Lebanon with 300 bullets and 2 missiles and 35 grenades? I'm like, yeah, but I'm one of the smaller guys in my regiment. Most of the guys are bigger. They carry a lot more than I do. This guy looks at me and says, you know what? I had to stop here the entire Jordanian Legion. All I had, 1,000 guys against me. All I had was 1 gun and me alone and a little tiny cardboard box full of bullets. And at a certain point, I emptied the box and counted my bullets. I found 35 bullets that actually matched my chamber, that actually fit in my gun. Now, if you would go and you would tell an IDF soldier today, you're going to go fight in Gaza or Lebanon, here, take 30 bullets, they would laugh you. It's like me telling you, sorry, here's $1, go find a car. I mean, it's like, it's a very, 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 I mean, it's funny. It doesn't even start. You don't even begin to comprehend how little they had. I told him, tell me a story that happened here. He said that after 2 days that he was here alone in the post, what happened is that they put up 2 soldiers right next to him to switch him. And he gave them a briefing and it was thinking, I want to sleep. The briefing he gave them was, it doesn't matter how much they shoot you. Don't shoot back. You don't have enough bullets. You have 35 bullets and there are 1,000 guys coming through. You cannot waste anything. Now, that guy looks at him and says, wait a minute, what do you mean I shouldn't shoot? What am I here for if not to shoot? He says, you don't have enough bullets. Don't put a mannequin down. Listen, if they all break in, there was a little barbed wire on that, in the middle of the alleyway. He says, if they break in, climb the barbed wire, then don't shoot them. Shoot the officers. Try to hunt down the guys who have ranks. You have to look at my shirt for a minute. Officers have ranks over here on top of the shoulder and not on the side. They have different ranks. So he says, find the guys who have ranks up on top, and you can hopefully shoot them so that we can maybe hurt their chain of command, and the commanders might be gone down a little bit. He says an hour later he wakes up after he hears screaming. He goes out to the post. He sees a girl screaming near a guy who was killed with a bullet in his face, and he asks, and he told me and all the soldiers it wasn't that he wasn't a normal soldier. He was a normal soldier. He just didn't comprehend that the battle doesn't have the battle there was not a normal battle. He has absolutely nothing to fight with. You're fighting, and all you have is 30 bullets. This is, by the way, one second. This is the book that he wrote, the Litzul Ben-Gul. This is a picture of him. I'll say something very sad. He died 3 months ago. He was an older man. So 3 months ago he died. I'm good friends with his grandson. From that post on, I would love to continue down south to one more area. For those who are familiar with the Jewish Quarter, it's near the Kofix. It's the area where the open cardo is, or near Cafe Ne'eman. If you guys look around there, you can easily tell what's new and what's old. Whatever is old in the Jewish Quarter, which is very little of it, whatever is original, is actually what's over there. What's original has screws holding the building together. The walls eventually fall outwards, and the second flight collapses down. So what they do is they screw a long screw through the entire building, and with a nut and a bolt holding it together. Like if you look, it looks like this, okay, all over the Jewish Quarter. Even if it's coated with modern stone, you can tell what's old because there are screws holding it up. What I'm trying to say is that 91%, whoever will walk around the Jewish Quarter tomorrow will see 91% was demolished during the course of the 1948 war. All they had is a handful of people, and the Jordanians blew everything up as they proceeded. The pictures I'm going to show you now are original pictures. That's the Horva synagogue going up in flames. That's all the books and all the furniture. It's a lot of smoke. And slowly the Jewish people are leaving their homes. They had no choice. So when IDF soldiers come over and say, leave now, they leave. They put their stuff into candlesticks into a sheet, and they leave. 5 minutes later, their house is looted. These are pictures of the looting. This is a picture taken by a photographer who was actually there at the time, John Phillips. I have half the pictures thanks to him. He actually, both sides, both Israelis and Jordanians, let him go by, and he took pictures of what was going on. And he took a picture of, here, it's not in Poland somewhere, and during the Holocaust. This is in the old city, in the same Jewish Quarter we visited so often. There's a picture on one side of people leaving their homes, and a picture of it 5 minutes later. This picture is an Arab guy who's looting. I'm showing it not because it's chauvinistic and it's funny. He's walking with nothing, with a little stick, and they're both carrying all the weight. His two wives. I'm showing it because wife number one is carrying something very devastating. I always ask people what this is like, and everybody says, well, barrels. I'm like, look again. This little tiny thing, what she's carrying on her head, wife number one, that's Sephardi Sifrei Torah. She's literally carrying 3 Sephardi Torah scrolls on her head. I don't know if to make more decorations out of the how do you say, decorations, the copper decorations, or if it's to make new leather lining for her shoes. I have no idea. But she's literally carrying Sifrei Torah. From here, I want to walk on to one more place. I want to go to what's called the 4 Sephardi synagogues. There's like a little bunch of 4 Sephardi synagogues in one place. If I look at it, very nice. Today it looks like this. 100 years ago, there actually are pictures of it. They used to look like this. Over here, women are crying. They squished about 1,000 people from the old city into this little area. What they had was 1 bathroom stall for 1,000 people. They had no food. A lot of us have children or nephews or kids that are young, and we can imagine if our younger kid doesn't eat for an hour or 2, you start getting kvetchy. We're talking about children didn't eat for days, and they're all sitting in there crying. And Menachem Meyer walks inside. Women are crying, where's my son? Where's my son? I can't, just tell me he's dead. I can't take the tension anymore. Just tell me. And women are trying to calm each other down. And at that point, Menachem Meyer was an officer, walks into the building, and he looks and he sees people by the Ark. The Aron Kodesh was open. And people were there praying right near it. And he scrunches over to the front and he says, what are you guys saying? And one of the guys shows him his thing. It's on Yom Kippur prayer, with a machzor for Yom Kippur, for prayer. And he says, why are you saying Yom Kippur prayer? It's not Yom Kippur now. And they look at him and they say, that's what you say before you die. You say confession. You'd say it also. These guys are in the synagogue saying confession. I want to mention one story of a guy who still lives in the old city, Menashe Penso. Today, 87. He was then 70 years old. Sorry, 89. A 17-year-old kid runs around every one of the posts with a machine gun. They had one machine gun in the old city, and he ran around different posts. Why? So that he can come and he can give a burst of fire in every post. So they would think that we have a machine gun in every position. And one of the posts he gets up, he looks ahead of him, and he sees a Palestinian local, a kid who joined the forces, Jordanians, who recognizes him, his next door neighbor. Abdullah Ibrahim was his name. And he yells at him, Menashe. He recognized him as Menashe. Until today, we worked together. We were friends, but today we're enemies. We're going to outnumber you and slaughter you like you're a bunch of chickens. What does it do to a 17-year-old kid who's there trying to fight for his own life when his next door neighbor shouts to him, you guys are surrounded and we're gonna fight you till the end. Now, when I leave the synagogue, if I take a sharp right, I walk down an alleyway, and I can talk about something very, very sad. I don't have pictures to back this, but the youngest soldiers that we commemorate on Yom HaZikaron died in the old city. Youngest, I'm talking about 13, 14, 10-year-old kid. Younger children. Ask me why. What do younger children do? Every single post had to have a younger kid in it. Ask me why. Because you can't run around a 12-year-old boy or girl cannot run with something with a machine gun that's heavier than them or weighs more than their body weight. What they could do is call for help if something goes wrong. And that's what they did. And every one of the posts had to have a kid with them. Now, these are not kids who watched action movies and want to be Rambo. They've seen people hurt. They've seen people wounded. They've seen people screaming with bad injuries. And yet they say, I am willing to fight. I want to fight. I'll stand in one of the positions here. There was a guy here, Menachem Meyer, who I mentioned a minute ago. When he stood in one of the positions here, and a big 120 millimeter mortar shell fell right near his post, his hand got amputated from the shoulder on, and he scribbled a note calling for help. And there was a girl here. Her name was Tova Albinovich. She ran down this alleyway, and when she's running down, what suddenly happened? A mortar shell fell right next to her, and it blew up. She got 50 pieces of shrap in her, all over her body, full of shrap. She lost her left arm, her wrist, and she flew on the wall, all wounded. When she woke up from being unconscious, she has no idea if it was 5 minutes or half hour. She has no idea how long passed. But she grabbed and she went down this alleyway. You can see her take a right or left in the picture. She took a right. She ran down to headquarters to get help from Menachem, not taking left, taking trying to get help for him. She was taking a left over here, trying to get, taking a right, trying to get help for him, not to the right, to get help for herself. It was more important for her to save his life than it was for her to treat her injury at that point. Now from here, I want to go down. I get to where I really wanted to go with this whole Yom HaZikaron thing. I get to where there's a plaza today. Today they put up a little medal around it with names of those who got killed. This is called the Galed. The Galed in Hebrew means the memorial. This was the memorial of where they buried all the people who died. 48 of the people who actually died in the Jewish quarter, they managed to retrieve the bodies. There were a few that they didn't, which is a very, very tragic story. There was no body, there's no grave to even say mourner's prayer on Yom HaZikaron. There isn't any. But 48 of the bodies were retrieved and buried over here. And today they're not there anymore. They're in military cemeteries, Mount Herzl and Har Zitim. But I want to mention, out of all 48 stories that I can mention here, 67 stories I can mention here, I want to zoom in and mention a story about one girl. I want to read a letter she wrote. If I look at this girl over here in the picture, smiling very nice, she's a 22-year-old girl. I'm sure you've been to ceremonies, so you guys know what lone soldiers are. In 1948, she was a lone soldier. Her family was in England. She grew up in England. She survived the Holocaust in England when Hitler was bombing England, London all the time with V-2 missiles. She was there in London. And the year after the war, she said, I want to come to Israel and I want to teach English. And she came to Israel to teach English. Sorry, one sec. Sorry about that. She came to Israel to teach English. And when the war broke out a year later, the War of Independence, she said, I'm joining the Haganah. I'm not going back to England like many people left Israel. She said, give me a gun. I'm gonna lend a hand. I'm gonna fight as well. What happened is, as she joined the war in the Jewish quarter, where it was the most difficult battle to fight almost, where they were outnumbered very, very, very severely. And a picture that's much more famous of her is this picture over here. A day before she died, a good friend of hers, a guy called Meir Steinberg, died in her hands from loss of blood. He was literally bleeding for 3 hours. There was nothing to do with him. And she was just sitting by his bed, and she cried and cried, and he just closed his eyes and never opened them again. She later, the day after that, got wounded very badly. She got a piece of strap roughly this big in the side of her thigh. It hurts like she was stabbed. There were no painkillers, no Advil, nothing in that they can possibly do and deal with. And slowly she started fading, and she realized, I'm never probably going to get a chance to say goodbye to my family. They're in London. And she quickly writes a note to her parents. And what does she have to write to her parents at this point? You'd expect a 20-year-old girl who is losing her life. Her best friend died a day earlier in her hands, and they're losing the war, and she's about to die and never see her family again. You'd probably expect a person like that to be broken, to be shattered. And what she has to write to her parents is a very, very emotional letter. I'm quoting a letter right now. She writes, "Dear Mom and Dad, if you even receive this letter, I'm assuming it's a little messy. I'm writing it to you to beg you, no matter what happens to me, please try to accept it in the spirit that I would want you to. Understand, I don't regret coming here to Israel at all. We've had a fierce battle. We've experienced hell here on earth, but it was well worth it, because I'm convinced that one day we were going to have a Jewish state, and all of our dreams will come true." I stop at this point with a lot of people, and I ask them, did anybody notice anything weird about this letter? And the weird thing that I find about this letter is not that she has a lot of energy, even though you'd expect a person like that to be shattered. The thing about this letter is that she writes it in plural. She writes the letter, we have had a fierce battle. We have had a Jewish state. Our dreams will come true. We've experienced hell here on earth. And she writes a letter in plural. And this, I think, encompasses the entire Memorial Day and the vibe that we feel and the vibe the soldiers feel when they give. This encompasses the whole thing altogether. These people did not fight for themselves. Esther did not fight for herself. She thought, you know what, if I need to do it, then I'll do it. There's a price to pay, and if I need to be that price to pay, I'm willing to pay it. I'm willing to be that price. And that's what she writes. I won't see it, but we are going to have a Jewish state. Like our dreams will come true. She's feeling a very, very strong feeling of collectivehood, which is what, and a lot of times in other countries we don't feel it, but here in Israel, we really do. Why do people feel Memorial Day so strong? Memorial Day in America, a lot of times, is a day of sales. People go shopping on that day. Here in Israel, people feel a feeling of respect because they feel like these people commemorated their lives or gave their lives so we can live. So we can go shopping, or so we can enjoy ourselves, or so we can see different things and go shopping and go to school and go to kindergarten. That's why they did it. They did it for me. They didn't do it for themselves. It's for me. And that's why people are so respectful of this day. That's why people feel so strongly. They feel a very strong feeling of collectivehood. And they feel like these people gave themselves for the collective. I'm not holding back. One last paragraph I'm gonna read from her letter. She writes, here in this holy city of Jerusalem, I am proud to pay the price it might take to redeem it. And don't think I took stupid risks. It's not worth it when you're so low on manpower. I hope you get a chance to meet one of my friends who survived, and then them talking to you about me will make you feel proud, not sad. Dear Mom and Dad, don't be any sadder than you must. Love you very much, Esther. That's what she has to write. She says, don't be sad about me. Be proud about me. Be proud about what I did. Feel it, and okay, be sad, but not any more than you must. I personally feel that this letter encompasses the entire feeling, the entire vibe that we feel on Yom HaZikaron. We feel these people did it for us. So yes, you definitely have to be respectful and sad in a way, but yeah, more than feeling sad and anguish, the feeling is a feeling of gratitude. Feeling that you want to thank these people that gave their lives so we can live a normal life here in Israel. From there, I want to go last stop and end with a bittersweet ending, is Batei Mechaseh. Today, it looks like this. 100 years ago or 50 years ago, this was the only place that actually had a square in the, this is the only area in the Jewish quarter where they actually had a square. This is what it used to look like. And it was a really big square. And what happened over here is they squished in all 2,000 people that were left here in the old city. and they put him in. And what happened is they ran the last bullet out, ran out of ammunition. And what they did is they surrendered. And this is a picture of Moshe Rosnak, the head of the Jewish quarter, surrendering. And what they did is that right now they realized, oh my God, what are they going to do to us? And the Jordanians said, okay, if you're surrendering under our conditions, first of all, give us all the weapons. Well, there's nothing to do with guns, don't have ammunition, so they gave them guns. And then they said, listen, all the men, we're taking you as captives of war. We're taking you as prisoners of war. They lined up all the men in one side and lined up all the women in the other, women and children. And all the men ages 50 until about 50, they lined everybody up. And at that point, this is probably the worst thing we can imagine happened in 1948. I'll tell you why. Not because they're lining up families and separating families, and some of them are Holocaust survivors, and this happened, just recently in the Holocaust. The reason this is so terrible is that 2 weeks before the battle here, 2 weeks and a day before, there's a place called Kfar Etzion. I live in Gush Etzion, there's a kibbutz there. And what happened in Kfar Etzion is that the same Jordanian army conquered it 2 weeks earlier. And they told all the men there, you're going as captives of war. And what they did to everybody is they shot them all. There are 3 survivors from Kfar Etzion kibbutz, but 151 people. If after the corona you can go to Mount Herzl, you'll see one big communal grave of 151 people that were there that day in Kfar Etzion. The entire kibbutz, by the way, except for 12 of them, all of them Holocaust survivors from Czechoslovakia and Poland and Hungary, all of them. But what happened is that the same Jordanian army, what did they do to all the prisoners? They killed them all. So hundreds of women and kids are realizing that they're about to kill your husband or daddy right around the block. They're about to kill him right now. And women are screaming, Zalman, Zalman, Menashe, Menashe, trying to get to them. And they're crying their heads off. A 9-year-old girl understands exactly what's going on because she sees her mom freaking out, that she's about to lose her husband. She cries, Abba, 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 screeching. Now, it's not 1 or 2 children. We're talking about 900 kids. You can copy one kid screaming Abba and multiply that screaming by 900. Kids are screaming at one time Abba. And in my opinion, this was the saddest place, or one of the saddest places, definitely, of all of 1948. There were women and children in one place. They rounded everybody up. People were in anguish, and they took all their belongings, and they hauled them out to where I put now Zion Gate. If you look at this picture of people leaving the old city, people were convinced their husbands and their parents are about to be killed. I always look at this picture and notice the girl on the right bottom side screaming, I'm assuming screaming Abba, Abba, leaving her daddy behind and convinced that they're about to kill him around the block. And they go out Zion Gate and they close the gate for the next 19 years. The city was divided. Now, there's a happy ending to this because what happened over here was it was a happy ending because what happened over there was sorry, I got cut off. I'm in the middle of WhatsApping because they're asking how long it's taking. I apologize. We should be done in 5 or 10 minutes, I hope. What happened over here was a happy ending because after 11 months where they were in Jordan and they were in prisoner camp, they didn't shoot them at the end. They didn't kill them like they were afraid would happen. They were taken to Jordan to a prisoner camp, and they came back about a year later, 11 months later. And when they came back, one of these kids who was taken captive was a kid called Eli Kedar. And Eli Kedar, then only 15, was 16 when he came back to Israel. And what happened was he came back to Israel, he opened a car repair shop, he finished high school, he joined the army, he did all kinds of things. When he was 34 years old, he was deputy of a battalion in the 6-Day War, deputy of a regiment in the 6-Day War. And what happened, we always look for these 19 years, the city was divided. But what happened after 19 years were these famous pictures of the paratroopers heading into the old city and heading inside. And 5 minutes later was this famous picture of Yoram Zamush and Stempel hanging the flag over the Kotel, and this famous picture of paratroopers by the Western Wall. What's much less known is that parallel to these pictures, the Jerusalem Brigade went in through Zion Gate, through Shar Tzion. They went right into the Jewish quarter. This person that we're looking at on the left side, all the way with sunglasses, that's Eli Kedar. Eli Kedar, at this point, had a few hundred soldiers under his command, and he comes into the Jewish quarter. Jewish quarter was all in ruins. This is a picture taken a few days later. Afterwards, what it looked like when some of these older Haredim came back to try to find their houses in all of this rubble and everything. this is what they found when they came back. They just found rubble and rubble and rubble. But today the Jewish quarter is rebuilt and we can barely see it. But that soldier that I mentioned a minute ago, Eli Kedar, who was 34 years old, who had hundreds of soldiers with him, ran right in to that square where he was taken captive. And he looks at it and he says, oh my God, and he starts crying. And all of his soldiers are looking at him and they're saying, why are you crying? Like, hello, you're high-ranking officer, you can't cry, people are looking at you. And he says, you don't understand what happened here. And they say, what? And he says, I was taken captive from here. My brother was almost killed. I was wounded. I can't believe we're back. I cannot believe we're back. And he starts crying and he goes to the door where he used to live and he knocks on the door and Arab opens up. His name's Hafez. He says, what do you want? He says, this was my house 19 years ago. And right door next to you was Chaim Leb Segal, and door next to you was Nachum Bornstein, and door next to you was Sami Levi. Man, beat it, we're back. And the Jewish quarter, as I told you, is rebuilt. One of the families who lives right around that square, in that square, Ben Chachal family, put an inscription right by the wall. And this inscription is so powerful. They took the inscription from the last prophet from the Bible, one of the last. His name was Zachary. We've all heard of people named Zachary. We have friends called Zach. This person, Zachariah, never set foot in Israel. He said, in the rivers of Babylon, where they lost his country, what does he do? He sits there and he says, do not worry. And they say, why? And he says, don't be distraught, don't feel bad. And they say, why? He says, because you guys will be back in Israel one day. What it says over here is there will be women and children walking in the streets of Jerusalem. Some of the men and women will be so old, they're going to have canes with them. And the city streets will be filled with boys and girls playing in them. In the same plaza, which was one of the saddest places in 1948. Today, what do I have? I have hundreds of kids playing there every single day. Again, thanks to the sacrifice, thanks to what's located 30 yards away, which is that memorial that I had there with those people that were buried. From here, I want to head down virtually down towards the Kotel and take a look at what I have here by the Kotel. If I look at these pictures of our Goran by the Kotel, the paratroopers over there, if I look at these famous pictures, there was one famous soldier there. His name is Chaim Hefer. He wrote a poem. With this poem, I would like to end the tour. It's my lousy translation to English. Believe me, in Hebrew it's nicer, but I think it encompasses a lot of what Memorial Day is all about. So try to imagine you're looking at the Kotel. Again, this is in Hebrew. It's much nicer. But in English, he says, so many prayers were said by this wall. This wall stands high when so many others fall. This wall felt its crevices filled with millions of notes and felt touch of crying women sharing their prayers and their hopes. This wall has seen empires vanish like clouds in the sky, but has never yet seen paratroopers cry. They're running towards it with their hearts pounding fast, with yelling and silence, a sight that's hard to grasp. And they suddenly feel it and touch it with this uncontrollable feeling. Suddenly all their eyes all started tearing, and they looked at each other gazing and shy, and asked, how could it be? How could it be the paratroopers crying? How could this young sense of familiarity glow? And how come those tears just uncontrollably flow? And I think the last two sentences encompass what we feel in Yom HaZikaron. How come those tears just uncontrollably flow? And how could those familiar feeling they feel glow? He writes, perhaps because these soldiers, who are just age 19, are standing here fulfilling 2,000 years worth of dreams. Because of those people, to get to the Kotel, there are 182 people. We have them from Mount Herzl all the way to the military cemetery in Kiryat Bialik, all over from Kerem Ben Zimra, which is by the Lebanese border. Some of the people who died. We have this thanks to a huge sacrifice that was made. And let us not forget that what we take for granted a lot of times is not something that we should take for granted. If we visit the Golan next time, or the Negev next time, or Haifa, everywhere else in this corner, every corner in this country, there probably were battles fought. And on this Memorial Day, I hope that we can walk around places, if in the most trivial place that we can see in the Jewish Quarter, if in the Jewish Quarter there's an area that looks very trivial, but we realize many people got killed looking at the Jewish Quarter to conquer it. I hope that we can realize that in other places there are many places and people sacrifice their lives, and if it's getting wounded or God forbid even worse, And definitely Memorial Day is a day that we should not just be sad and feel a very sad vibration, but it's definitely a day that we should come and we should commemorate and we should be appreciative and we should look at it and we should ask ourselves, I hope this presentation inspires a lot of us to come and say, how do I want Memorial Day to be a meaningful day for me? I can give a suggestion, and with this I will end. And I will say that I think that people should, if they could, choose one soldier, just one that you want to commemorate this day. Go tomorrow on, they're having Zoom meetings of different families if you can speak Hebrew well enough. And if not, read a Wikipedia page or an article or something written about somebody who's fallen. One soldier, choose one that you want to commemorate and feel appreciation towards on this Memorial Day. And hoping that this Memorial Day, with all the Corona restrictions, should not just be one more day. And hopefully, out of Memorial Day being a day full of appreciation, we'll also be able to celebrate the next day, Yom HaZikaron, and really, really be happy about what we have, realizing what was given in order for us to have it. So thank you very, very much for joining. And that's it. I wish you guys a very meaningful day. I know somebody here wants to have words at the end, so I'm off. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eitan. And my name is Herbert Block. I'm the Executive Director of the American Zionist Movement here in New York. And I want to first of all thank our partners from the Israel Forever Foundation, the Am Israel Foundation and their TLV Internationals program, the Israel Jewish Congress, and the team of Ilana Heidemann, Ariana Typograph, Alicia Post, and everyone who made this event logistically happen today, an important way to connect us all. I thank you for the opportunity to close out our program, and I'll take a personal note to connect what we heard earlier and the presentation from Eitan just now. 14 hours ago, I was sitting at the same computer watching live on Facebook as my son, Joseph Block, had his Tekes Hashpa'ah at the Givati Brigade base in the Negev near the Egyptian border, where he has finished a month of training as a lone soldier. And I've been in Israel twice on, I think, on Yom HaZikaron, and it's always an amazing experience to be there and remember the soldiers and be in Memorial Day in Israel, which is so different from Memorial Day in America in the way it's commemorated and celebrated, and have the experience was different for me this year, beginning the day 14 hours ago with my son now joining the IDF and thinking about the sacrifices that everyone has made who has gone before him, the lone soldiers and those who are resident in Israel, and everybody putting their lives on the line to defend our nation and our people. He is in the IDF with a group of boys from Yeshivat HaKotel who are living and were studying and living the last year and a half in the old city, in the Rova Yehudi, in the quarter, in the very streets that you were showing the history there. And it really connected it all together for me personally. And I hope that we will have a important and meaningful Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron commemorations tonight in Israel, and in later on when the Yom HaZikaron begins at sunset here in America, and throughout the next day, and then leading into our rejoicing at home for Yom HaAtzmaut in this very unique year, unlike others. And thank you all who've participated and watched. On behalf of AZM and Israel Forever Foundation, our partners, and the Tel Aviv Internationals, we will be keeping you abreast of other programs in the near future. Thank you very much for joining us today.